So when we all started the MPA program, we all explained why we wanted to study public administration. And well, undoubtedly 99.9% of all our goals were tied to getting paid. Well, maybe not explicitly that, but a career goal, promotion, career change, and well, the list goes on and on. And this is all affected by compensation. So today, Yaki and I, Esther, will talk to you about compensation and what it means in the public sector. In the first half of this short video, I will talk to you about the great pay debate. This debate questions whether public sector salaries should follow private sector market values. After all, we are all carrying out the same functions, but just for distinctly different organizations, right? Well, let's take a look at a case study in the city of Bell. In 2010, the city administrators and other city executives were arrested for their extraordinarily high salaries noted here. When questioned about his salary, ex-city administrator Robert Rizzo responded that his salary was reflective of his market value in the private sector. And although the question of how these types of salaries go approved, unquestioned, and unnoticed in the public sector for so long is a greater issue, we must ask ourselves, what is an ethical and appropriate salary that shows an individual that they are valued? So as with any case, there are two sides to this story. One side, as highlighted by USA Today and the Wall Street Journal, argues that private sector wages are lower than public sector wages by 20% when benefits are included as cited by the U.S. Government Accountability Office. The other side, as quoted by the Office of Personnel Management and the President's Pay Agent, argues that compared to the private sector employees, public sector wages are 26% lower, as found in research by Keefe, Lucy, Bender, and Haywood. So evidently there are some discrepancies here. And when the OPM asked the National Academy of Public Administration and the Administrative Conference of the United States to do some unbiased research, they stated they had other projects of greater priority. So what can we conclude? This means a lot to employees, means more to some departments than others, some cities than others, some states than others, but it is a relatively small problem for the federal government. Cutting all pay in half would only decrease annual federal spending by 3%. But the transparent California data provided by the Nevada Policy Research Institute has taught us a few things about the pay differences in private and public sector. Primarily, this research has shown us that if you look at public jobs in terms of organizational structure, with entry-level positions here and the top executive positions here, the greatest variation in pay compared to the private sector occur in two extremes, as represented by this inverse bell curve. And this is true for both arguments at either end of this curve. So for entry-level employees, public sector employees are paid significantly higher than private sector employees, and top-level managers, directors, and executives are paid significantly more in the private sector than in the public sector. So depending on what pool of employees you are analyzing, both of these previously made claims are correct. So some final conclusions about the great pay debate. For one, government is not and cannot be subject to market forces in the same way that the private sector is. But we do need valid, unbiased comparisons to be able to suggest changes based on concrete evidence. This is therefore not an economic question of supply and demand alone, but instead a question about what the role of government should be in society. Data and logic will not be able to resolve these discrepancies. So, once the Office of Personnel Management has unbiased data and plans to reform policy around compensation, it must ensure that it meets its goals of providing transparency, equal pay for equal work, no political influence, and the ability to recruit and retain a well-qualified workforce. So if you still have no clear answer about how closely related private and public employee wages should be, I don't either. It's clear this is a political question and will continue to be debated as such. But on the bright side, my colleague Yaki will speak to you now about the factors that make up what we call compensation.
Now, let's see the purpose of compensation. In every organization, it's essential to understand the importance of compensation. The hiring managers can have the flexibility in designing a compensation package that can in turn attract, retain, and develop a quality talent pool. So, for the employers, a well-developed compensation system is a great brand image for attracting more candidates to work for the company. It can motivate employees for higher productivity and performance. And also, it can provide healthy internal competition and retain talent in the organization. For employees' part, a compensation can be the biggest part of their work-life balance. It's also the tool for them to self-esteem. Now, let's move to major components of compensation. The compensation is usually given in the form of monetary rewards that can be either direct or indirect. Direct compensation includes base pay and variable pay. For the base pay part, there are wages and salaries. For variable pay, there are bonus, incentive pay, and stock sharing. Indirect compensation is kind of benefits that include medical insurance, paid time not worked, retirement pensions, and others. Let's see some detail in terms of types of compensation. There is differences between wages and salaries. Wages is an hourly compensation paid to operating employees, and the basis for wages is time. Salaries is an income paid to an individual on the basis of performance, not the basis of time. As that's the big differences between these two objectives. As I introduced in the previous slide, the indirect compensation includes paid time off, like when employees are on their vacation and holidays or they are sick. Another one is called insurance coverage, such as medical insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, and etc. Last one mentioned here is called services. For example, it can be a term of providing assistance to help employees to achieve education success. Let's move to the approach to compensation. Employees should be rewarded what they know rather than what they are specifically required to do on the job. The first one we mentioned here is cost of living pay adjustment are given annually to maintain external equity since inflation is characteristic of modern society. The second one is seniority pay is furnished on the basis that an employee's value has increased for the organization as a result of experience, training, and professional development. The third one is called merit pay. Like seniority pay is a performance-related pay. It provides bonus for employees who perform their jobs effectively according to easily measured criteria. Next is skill-based pay, rewards employees for acquiring new skills. For incentive pay, also known as pay for performance, is so called because the prospect of financial compensation is supposed to be an incentive for an employee to remain motivated, work hard, and strive for the best possible result. The last one, pay for knowledge, is compensating employees for learning specific information. Goals for compensation Compensation professionals promote effective compensation system by the following three main objectives. First, internal consistency, which plays a major role in analysis of the compensation. For employees in the organization, this involves job analysis and job evaluation. Second, market competitive competitiveness involves retaining skilled personnel to the organization. Compensation system is developing by by, by strategic alliance, which includes internal factor and external market force. These are considered when developing a compensation system. Internal factors include company financial status, the employees and compensation policy. External market force includes company profile, competition, labor market, and long-term prospects of the organization. The last one is to identify and recognize individual efforts. In any organization, salaries are not equally given to the employees. It depends on their work, skill, educational qualification. Compensation professionals make use of pay grades, pay ranges for designing a pay structure depending on the compensation factors and value. Okay, now that's all. Thank you for listening.